Hi everybody, we had the delightful visit of a couple of raw vegans from the coast who dropped in a couple of days ago for the morning, and while they were with us we decided to take the opportunity to interview them both so that we could share their story with you here on our channel. The couple were Caro and Caleb. They've been together for the last 6 months or so, and we did the interviews both at the same time. Kvitka sat on the veranda and interviewed Caro, while I took Caleb out into the orchard and we sat under a couple of trees and I recorded him there. So the interviews were done simultaneously, and now we're going to see the interview with Caleb. And next week you can expect to find the interview with Caro. So I hope you enjoy it. Here it is. So hi everybody, I got with me today Caleb. He's come up and visited us with Caro. It's the first time we met actually, we've never met before. And Caleb's got his own journey that I'd like to talk with him about. So can you tell us how you got started on a raw journey?
Sure. I had a particular focus on health. I've nearly always been physically fit, actively involved in team sport, and conscious of a healthy now is a healthy later.
Yeah.
I've long held the view that healthy is probably the best kind of wealthy, and that the thinking around those principles was really energised with an injury 5 years ago.
Yeah, you broke both your wrists.
That's right. You learn a lot about yourself with two broken wrists.
That must be particularly taxing. Breaking both your wrists, it means you're dependent on somebody to help you.
I managed that journey alone, and that's the self-knowledge bit.
Wow.
And so I was obviously motivated to maximise the recovery and to minimise the healing time. So I switched out those elements of my diet that I had suspected for some time weren't as nutritionally valuable.
How did you come to that realisation?
I went in search of the knowledge. And obviously, apart from the physical elements of a recovery around physio and things like that, the thing that I had absolute control of was whatever it was that I put in my body. And I've long been known as that guy that eats everything, and I have had a really healthy appetite. Very good on the fork. I discovered that by eating better quality food meant that I was eating a lot less of it as well. And so I was determined to put all of the right things in, and there was a little bit of me wanting to prove the doctor wrong as well. And I've learned that typically within the system I'll give you the worst case scenario, and I didn't want to be the worst case, so I set out to be the best possible case that I could, and I switched out all of those things that I had suspected were not terribly good for me and replaced it with the things that were obviously very good for me, fruit and vegetables.
Raw? Or?
I was also very lazy in the kitchen actually, so yes, the short answer is that yes, it was raw. And it was funny that I had never really made an association of bundling fruits and vegetables into a blender as raw food as such, and it was only until I met others that were particular about raw food diets that it occurred to me that okay, this is what I do.
So when was it exactly that you had the accident?
5 years ago.
5 years ago. And that's when your journey started, and where are you at now?
Look, I think it's worth commenting on the many benefits that I've observed within that 5 years, in which I was particular about at least 2 meals a day, raw combinations of fruit and vegetables. And over that period of time, I've observed much higher energy levels. I've lost weight that I didn't necessarily want to lose, but I guess I'm still working on that balance. Healthier bowel movements. I can point to a change in my outlook in life that is either a coincidence of the fruit and vegetable intake that I had, or it was because of that increased fruit and vegetable intake. But I ramped things up a little bit at the beginning of the year after breaking my foot, and I'd been there, I'd done it, I knew exactly what I needed to do, and my diet was entirely raw fruit and vegetables.
And you noticed that it significantly helped you speed up, that's your perception of things?
Well, I suspect that the medical advice caters to the lowest common denominator, and that I wasn't ever going to fit that category, and so I set about, again, attempting to prove the medical advice wrong, and I'm certain that improved diet, that raw fruit and vegetable diet, almost exclusively supported a rapid healing process. I'm not sure that there was anything else that I could have done better than what I was doing in simply putting all of the right things into my body. The most interesting part about that for me, I think, was the discovery of how many bad things I was putting into my body. I eat clean. I eat good, clean food.
What you believed was good.
Right,
Yeah.
and it was only until I switched everything out with raw fruit and vegetables that it became glaringly obvious that approach to food, if nothing else, absolutely assured me that I had removed all of the bad elements from my diet. So for me, it's a really interesting starting place because it helps me to understand basic principles around nutrition. And as a pretty enthusiastic sportsman, having only not long ago healed from a broken foot, I'm now embarking on this journey of understanding, getting back into a training program. I'm discovering now my intake is greater, but I have no desire for the things that I once considered not unhealthy, but they just weren't as healthy as I could be eating.
So going back to when you broke your wrists, is it safe to say that you cut out all animal products at that point?
Let me think about that. With the exception of egg. But even then I was only eating eggs infrequently.
Yeah.
But certainly stop eating meat.
Yeah. And how would you describe your typical day now eating?
Rusty's is open 3 days a week.
Rusty's is the market in Cairns.
I go to the fruit market 3 days a week. I go there and get everything I need. And I'm energised by the fruit and vegetables that are available to us there, and it's become a way of life. Were it open 7 days a week, I'd probably go 7 days a week. I've got a watchful eye on what's in season, and I go to the stall holders that I know that grow produce locally. I try to eat everything that's in season, and I'll eat it in abundance, and it's exciting. It's a way of life for me that I wouldn't consider ever changing.
Wonderful.
There's no desire for me to...
You don't eat anything cooked anymore?
Not since I broke my foot.
No. So it's been 3-4 months?
Beginning of the year, nearly
3-4 months.
Just over 4 months.
Yeah. And those who are near and dear to you, like your family, what do they think of this?
They're not quite sure what to make of it. I work in a Indigenous community just east of Cairns, and it is among the poorest of Aboriginal communities around Australia. It is recovering from a long list of challenging circumstances, and diet is at the core of many Aboriginal people's physical and health challenges. And of the responses that I've had, or the reactions that I've had, I think the most interesting was from my friends that I work with over at Yarrabah, the Aboriginal community, and they're in astonishment that a meal can be taken without meat and uncooked. And while I'm not sure that that's necessarily a reflection of the traditional diet of Indigenous Australians, certainly not the people of that region anyway, but for a community of people that don't get sufficient guidance and advice and more broadly education around healthy eating, it just simply doesn't compute that I could eat raw food
without any animal flesh.
Without any animal products. My family are meat eaters probably every day, and they know to expect some challenges on the occasions that I share the table with them, because I've always been a little bit odd, but now I've cemented myself in the place of that odd one out within the family.
Club.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary. I could imagine how others who have lived a life of this have perhaps just been observed as just peculiar, sitting way outside mainstream.
Polite way of saying it,
sitting way outside of mainstream thinking and living.
That's very true.
I wouldn't have it any other way. I went to a really interesting personal development program some years ago in the States, and Americans do productions in a way that only Americans can, and an exercise that they had us participate in was to imagine our perfect place, and in that place was there with somebody. I can't make out the face of that person. I don't know who that somebody was. It wasn't even clear that somebody was a female, but what was absolutely clear was the fruit and vegetables that I was surrounded by.
You were growing them as well, in the vision.
In that vision, they were baskets of tropical fruit and vegetables.
And was this before you were?
This was before. So I suspect I probably always had an attraction towards these things, and I think that the injuries, both of which were
catalysts in some way.
They were catalysts. That's exactly what they were. Both of them doing things that I loved, and they have helped me to appreciate that good healing comes with good diet. And in fact, diet is critical to good healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that you can accelerate healing. Or at least, certainly I have for my own circumstances.
No, I think it's very true for everybody.
Yeah.
If the cleaner your diet is, the quicker healing will go. This is just natural biology of the body.
I'm not necessarily any stronger. People have often commented on my endurance,
Yeah,
my staying power,
yeah, the stamina.
my energy,
Yeah.
my stamina.
Mm.
And I feel better. Difficult to describe a sense of well-being that you live with every day.
Mm.
But I can certainly point to an absence of that sense of well-being prior to that journey.
Sometimes you don't know what you're missing until you've actually got it. So you had this vision of kind of seeing yourself with somebody who's possibly Caro, who at this moment is being interviewed by Ketka on the veranda. But I'm not saying it is so. I don't want to put any pressure on you guys, but have you actually started growing your own fruit trees now and some food for yourself?
Yeah, I have. I've always enjoyed watching things grow.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed the process of extracting seeds from the fruit that I'm eating and experimenting with those seeds, planting them up. And this year alone, I've planted 60 different fruit trees. I wish I'd marked them a little bit better.
Yeah. So you forget what's what.
It's going to be a fascinating garden. I hope that will be an interesting journey of just foraging.
Yeah.
In a space like this one. I like that idea of going for breakfast in your backyard.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Oh,
There's nothing better than being able to pick the fruit that you've actually grown from the seed yourself. And at this moment, we're sitting underneath 2 ackee trees that I've grown from seed, from fruit that I've eaten myself, or that Ketka and I have eaten. That's a wonderful thing to be doing, and I really hope and pray that will come to pass for you too.
It's certainly my future, and I fully appreciate that I've developed an insight that I'm somewhat blessed to have the knowledge of self and what we need to do to be our best.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of growing old in a way that is either unhealthy or is unnecessarily limiting, and I think that in addition to all those good things that we can do for ourselves around physical activity, I think that being very, very careful about what we put into our bodies is key.
Yeah.
It is the singular best health activity that we can engage in.
Absolutely, and it is also something we actually have control over ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not like we're dependent on anybody else, what we put in our body. We can make that choice for ourselves, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
So how much land have you got?
I don't have any. It's actually my father's land, and while his interest is in indigenous hardwood, there's more than enough space and quality soil and rainfall.
So he's just letting you plant what you want.
I think he's probably a bit chuffed that I share in his vision of growing trees, regardless of the purpose. He's less inclined to focus on the health benefits of what the trees provide and more interested in the growing process itself. But we have a common interest there that certainly improved our relationship as well.
Being in the wet tropics, obviously that means that you can grow things like rambutan and durian and mangosteen and other things which don't thrive up here where we are in the dry.
A little space on the East Russell just outside of Babinda, arguably among the wettest places in Australia. It is geographically well placed in terms of water access. The soil is fertile. It's a wonderful place to grow anything. I suspect that I probably could grow anything.
Yeah.
Over my fruit journey, I quickly realised that all of those seeds that I was spitting out were potentially that next piece of fruit that I was going to eat, and that it is so appealing to me, the idea that I can walk out in my backyard and forage. And so I'm going through the process of just figuring out how to make that happen. And while that property is not my backyard, one day it might be.
It's so good in your family, it's your father, and you're blessed really to have somebody who can give you that piece of land to grow things on.
Gifted. Totally.
I'm very, very happy for you, Kev. You discovered the reality of food and what a detrimental effect cooked food can have on one's body, how it can slow down the healing process, and it just not only the body, but it also keeps the mind, how can I say, narrow too. I think it opens up a whole new world when you start eating raw.
It certainly has for me. There is no doubt about the broader appreciation that I have for the environment in which I live, tropical far north Queensland, the abundance of fruit and vegetables that are grown in a short distance of where I live, my engagement with the market, the fresh food market, Cairns, Rusty's, and the people that supply the produce. It's been a wonderful learning journey for me. And to know that I've got ready access to clean, healthy, nutritious food, the joy that I get just contemplating, just stopping to think about how lucky I am in those circumstances. Despite the little challenges that have been my guides, my markers in life.
I am curious, one thing with a lot of people experience when they switch from a diet of pretty much everything, even if it was a slightly healthier version of what a lot of people eat. Did you find yourself suffering with the cravings that so many do and feeling, oh, I just want to eat this, even though you knew it wasn't right?
No, I adapted really well. Adapted quickly and easily, and I think because I'm a very energetic person, I'm very active, and the benefits were just immediate.
Yeah.
It was glaringly obvious how my endurance, my stamina, my energy had improved, and so it was easy for me to disregard any hint of a craving for anything else. But I was also pretty lucky that the cravings weren't much to speak of.
Yeah.
I think that this was...
You're so lucky in that regard, because so many people want to go over to raw and they just sucked in all the time to eating something cooked because the body is craving it all the time.
My craving is my next salad, quite frankly.
Oh, that's
my
so
craving
good.
is my next visit to the fresh food market.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, what do you think of the concept of eating only fruit and not eating lettuce or salads with it? Does that appeal to you in some ways?
Sure. I guess because I've always associated fruit with it being something of a treat. Kids, we would have fruit as a snack between meals, or sometimes for dessert, and it's the sweetness of fruit that leaves me a bit unsure about whether or not I would eat just fruit alone. But it was recent discovery of things like durian, and to a lesser extent dragon fruit, which has a lovely floral bouquet to it. It's a very gentle sweetness. Durian is something of a savoury fruit. Well, it's got lots of complex elements to its flavours, but
it really does.
And that provides something of a balance. And so I'm interested in exploring how fruits might satisfy that palate for savoury that I have.
That's when you've got things like ackee you can have that can satisfy that. There are fruits around. I mean, you can just stick to
the peanut.
The peanut butter fruit.
What's that? What's the botanical name for that?
Bunchosia.
Bunchosia.
Yeah.
A stellar fruit.
Yeah.
That would easily satisfy my palate for savoury.
I think that if you include this one too, the ackee, there's a similarity.
Yeah, I'm excited by that one. And just the joy of walking around your space.
Yeah. And we have beautiful birds singing as well all the time.
Among the bird song.
Yeah.
Sampling things as we go. This is really quite special.
Yeah, it is. No, we're very blessed. Well, Caleb, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit and talk. Is there anything else you want to say before
Look, I was here really to support Cara, and didn't expect you to have an interest in my journey, but in sharing this conversation with you, I can understand how perhaps my journey may be of some interest to others. And it's only until we're having this conversation that I think about those occasions where I've influenced friends predominantly to have an interest in what I'm doing and to share in what I do. Only because they've had their own health challenges, and I think it's a great story to tell. I think that everybody should tell their story of good health, and if for those that appreciate or benefit from good health, there's no doubt about it that somewhere within that story is a story of good eating, and fruits are a terrific story to tell. I'm flattered, I guess, that you had an interest in hearing my story, and I'm really happy to share it.
Now, for some reason I don't understand fully, the video got cut short at the very end. It was recording fine the whole time, and suddenly, of its own accord, the camera just decided, well, I've had enough of this, and it turned itself off. Actually, it didn't turn itself off, it just stopped recording. And it wasn't a question of the battery not being enough, or the fact that there maybe wasn't enough disk space, because that wasn't the case. There definitely was enough of both, because the camera was still on, it was still looking at us. But it just decided, for whatever reason, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm going to stop, so it stopped. So sorry about that, but the good thing is that I'd recorded the whole video and we were only like a minute or less than a minute away from rounding up anyway, so the whole video was pretty much there, which is good news. And next week expect to find the video from Kwiatka and Carol sitting on the veranda, and hope to see you then. Bye!